like to validate this gentleman. No, I'm joking. Just joking. But yeah, just to get to know them a bit better as a couple. And yeah, so please, guys, loads and loads. We want them to answer loads and loads of questions today. But before we get started, I'm going to get each couple to introduce themselves. I know you guys probably know, Wale and Ayo, but because we have new people joining us for today, we'll get them to introduce themselves. So, Ayo and Ruth, can you introduce yourselves, please?
First, of course.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much, Tinuke, for having us on today. Yeah, so my name is Ruthie Mccarthy, and I'm 33. Yeah, Ayo and I have been married for 3 years. I work as a CEO and founder of my own organisation called Magnify, and we're based in London, and we've been together for 6 years.
So I am Ayo Afolabi, said husband of Ruthie Mccarthy. Also 33 years old today. And yes, I work as a management consultant in the city at KPMG, predominantly the financial services industry. And yes, as for history of our relationship, I think Ruth has surmised it quite well. Being together.
Manchester United is a big part of our relationship.
Oh yeah, so yeah, we're both huge Man United fans. Hey, Wale, yes. Big Man United fans, bonded over our love for Man United. Very important stage gate for me for the past. And yeah, we've been since 2015 on that road together.
Okay, but married for how long?
3 years.
Coming up to 3 years. 3 years in September.
Okay, great. And Tinuke.
So I'm Tinuke. How do I introduce myself? I always introduce myself as a wife and a mother because those are the roles that I consider the most important. But I do lots of other things that I dabble in terms of work, social media, admin, bits and pieces. Anyway, that's not that irrelevant. I've been married to Wale. Am I supposed to say my age? I noticed you guys said your age. What's wrong with you guys? Anyway, I will say my age because I'm proud of my age. I'm 49 and I've been married to Wale. It's going to be 24 years this year. He's had his eye on me since I was 10, which is actually well, actually. But anyway, so yes, that's us.
I don't see how it was wrong, but yeah. I'm Wale. I'm middle-aged. I'm Tinuke's husband. I'm lucky to have her as a wife. I work as a CEO of WA Quadrant. We dabble in various things. And I'm a father of 4. That's me.
Okay, so what just said, what does middle age mean?
Well, so put it like this. We're aiming for, perhaps 90, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't say I'm somewhere in the middle there.
Yes, you cross, because if you're aiming for 90, you cross.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle, yeah.
Okay, so he's middle age. I hope you don't have middle age spread though.
Well, so that's another thing. But let's move.
Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you, folks. So I'm going to start with Ayo and Ruth. Now, the obvious question would have been, oh, how did you guys meet and all of that? Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you guys met?
She starts the story first, because this backstory is quite interesting, so I think we can kind of contextualize our meeting.
Yeah, so Ayo's has a best friend who's my oldest childhood friend, so we've known each other our whole lives. So I always knew of him, but yeah, just kind of from seeing him, I was always like, he's just going to be one of those types of guys, and I'm not really, kind of interested.
See presumption.
And so we met, yeah, we were kind of always around each other. I remember our friend's bowling party. We would always like joke on social media about Manchester United. So we're very aware of each other. But then in 2015, in January, we connected again. And I remember our first conversation. It was very random, but all about purpose and Manchester United. So that was about 2 hours. And the only way I can say, I know it sounds cheesy, but I just had this feeling of peace and like I'd come home. But obviously because of the relationship that we had with our friend, it was a bit like, yeah, we kind of need to be serious about this because there's other friendships and relationships involved here. And then 2 weeks later on Facebook, Kyle messaged me and he was like, you know, it was so great to meet you, that Facebook is really cumbersome, which he denies, but I have the message.
No, I said, no, I didn't say, no, I didn't
Let
say.
me finish, then you can do your correction.
Fine.
Yeah, he said Facebook is really cumbersome.
Which is more, okay, so if Facebook is way more cumbersome than having
you can make
text.
your amendments at the end.
No, I'm not amending, I'm just saying that factually speaking, Facebook Messenger is more cumbersome than WhatsApp. Like,
so then he asked me for my number, but I really don't like talking on the phone, so I put my phone on airplane mode. So I thought he'd just like get the message that, yeah, the phone isn't for me. So the next day he's like, oh, I tried to call you, like, I'll try again this evening. I was like, oh goodness. But basically for the next 3 weeks, every day we would speak for like 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. And in a way, we both say it was like an interview where we clearly were asking very, thought-provoking questions. And before then, I basically prayed this prayer and said to God, I don't want any more false starts. I don't mind if it's that I wait 10 years or 12 years or, you know, never, but I just don't want to be with someone that doesn't align with my purpose and what you have for me. And then, 4 weeks later, he asked me out. And basically when he asked me out was like, I could see this, what did you say? Basically ending up in marriage. So I think, from day one, I knew that he was very intentional and serious.
So no corrections, but just to point out that clearly Facebook Messenger is not the preferred mode of communication when you're having when you want to have proper conversation compared to text and phone. So just wanted to throw that in, but also to add on a more serious note that I think given the previous relationship that I'd come out of, I also was in the mindset as well that I didn't want any more false starts as well, because actually in the previous relationship that I'd been in, we kind of got to the stage whereby we were considering marriage as kind of like the next step.
Okay.
And so, you know, I think we both approached this relationship with the mindset that, you know, we want to be intentional about where we're going and what we want to do. So I think that was hugely kind of from a timing perspective, that was hugely influential.
Okay, great. And Tinuke, you said he had his eye on you since you were 10. 10?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about this.
So his older sister was best friends with one of my older cousins. And funnily enough, I knew everything about him before I met him because they're always talking about him. Oh, he's so dark, you know, when he smiles, you can only see at night, you can only see his teeth and his eyes. You know, I knew the whole that he's so charming. I knew what he was for. I knew everything about him, but I never met him. And one day I went round to their house and he happened to be there. Or did you come when? I know he came whilst I was there. So so I met him. I mean, I felt like I knew him because I knew so much about him. So I punched him. I said, "Oh, so you are Wale Akinbulumo," you know, because obviously I knew him. So I kind of punched him, and that was it. That punch just changed his life, you know. He said to me later, he was thinking, the audacity of this small girl is punching me. But alas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we met. Now, obviously.
Was it love at first punch?
Apparently. Because from there we became friends.
Okay.
And I used to visit quite regularly whenever I was in town because I was in boarding school. So whenever I'd be in town, I would go, you know, every now and again I'd go and visit. And so the friendship grew. Even then, you know, I think I did ask her to go out with me a few times.
How old was she when you first asked her to go away?
Well, put it like this: there were just a couple of years between us, so no, I wasn't cradle snatching.
That's not.
um, I think it was 12 or 13.
Okay.
13 when I first asked her out. Yeah, and you know, of course, she brushed me away till she brushed me away till she was 17.
Well done, girl.
Yeah. So I obviously she couldn't deny the.
So do you know what? When I hit 17, I was like, this guy, Sha, okay, let me just say yes. You know, as in he's not even leaving me alone. That's how it was.
At 17, I'm sure she was like, finally I can say yes. and yes, so that's when we started to go out.
Ah, okay. Well done, well done. But at 12, Uncle Wale has it. Anyway, we'll leave it there.
Well.
The early riser catches the fish, right, Uncle Wale? Right?
That's right.
Okay. If you say so, Ayo. Right, okay, so for Ayo and Ruth, and let me say this. A lot of, from what I understand, because this question was sent in, a lot of younger people see both of you as the perfect Hollywood couple. You know, the picture perfect couple. They're both successful. You know, they've just got it together, good looking. You know, even look at the way. Look at folks. Look at the way Ayo and Ruth. Look at the way they're sitting. Look at Tinuke and this one is like we've been married for 24 years. This one is a style to the way Ayo and Ruth are sitting.
Okay, let me get it. Ruth is slightly approach. Well, sit up. I tried.
So Ayo and Ruth. There's this, people think, they look at you as role models. Tell us, is there anything like a perfect marriage? Will you say you guys have a perfect marriage? Tell us a bit about your marriage.
In a word, no.
No way. And I don't believe that anyone has a perfect marriage. I think that question is interesting because I think especially in our generation, we talk a lot about relationship goals and actually the falsehood, I think, of relationship goals where you see two people take a nice photo and then assume that absolutely everything in their life is perfect. And that's really just like a snapshot. You know, a photo takes 30 seconds and being together is a 24/7 thing.
And also bearing in mind that most of the time when we take photos, I don't actually want to be in the photo. Yeah. So you might get the perfect photo shot in that free space instant, but either side of it, before it, there's me complaining about having to take the photo, and then afterwards it's me saying, no, we've taken one already, I don't want to take it.
There's a rubbish bin right next to us. But yeah, I think that one of the things we do always say is we do prioritize and invest a lot in making our marriage the best it can be. So we'll probably talk a bit later, but both of us are such advocates for counselling. So obviously at church we did the marriage course, which was, I guess 8 weeks, but we did counselling one-on-one where we paid every week. We had to make sacrifices in terms of dinners and other things because we knew that we want to have an amazing marriage. It's definitely not a perfect marriage, but our marriage after our faith is the most important thing to us. So I think, even our friends would definitely say that we don't have a perfect marriage, but the two of us do really put in a lot of work to make our marriage as good as it is. And I always think that when it comes to our careers or different things, a lot of us are happy to get coaching or to get professional input to make us as good as we can be. But often with relationships, we just think we'll wing it and hopefully it will work out well. Whereas I think from even before we got married, we were always very intentional. We'd always communicate that we're two very, very, very different people who come from different backgrounds, who have different life experiences, and in many ways different perspectives on certain things. So for us, our marriage isn't perfect, but we definitely take a lot of time and we're very intentional in making our marriage as great as it can be.
Yeah, and just to pick up on the point of difference, I think when people look at the picture of perfection or relationship goals. Like, we are so different. Like, she's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. I love being out and about. She loves being at home. We're actually quite different people. So, you know, that lesson, I should say, of learning to accept each other for who we are is always going to be kind of like a concurrent theme through our relationship that we're having to constantly work at. Like, you know, I constantly have to understand that, you know, she is some way inclined that is very different to me, which means that I have to make space for it and also acknowledge and accept that, and vice versa. So I think that that's always going to, because we're not in relationships to change one another. So, you know, that constant notion of acceptance of our differences and actually celebrating our differences is so important, but can be difficult, particularly when we're set in our ways of, you know, specific ways we want to do things. So I think that difference thing is quite important.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to come back to some of the things you guys mentioned, but let's go to Tinuke and Wale. So you guys have been married for we're going on to 24 years now. Yeah?
That's right.
What are the things or the tips you can give Ruth and Ayo? What are the lessons you've learned from your marriage that you can pass on to them?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm listening to you guys. There's something very, I think it's one of the most important things you mentioned just now, which is first learning to accept each other for who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, I think it was Ruth that said, it's like a constant theme within the marriage.
Yeah.
You will always be who you are, but it's in learning to accept. It's in understanding that the other person is not perfect, as neither are you.
Yeah.
And you understand that it's actually both of you in this together, as opposed to one standing on one side and one standing on the other side.
Yeah.
Leading from that, I think one of the main things for us is that understanding that we are a team working. I think I've said this before, not against the world. It's not like we're fighting everybody. It's putting us first, facing everything else, and us as a unit, never divided. And that's very important, regardless of how the challenges may come in.
Yeah.
It's understanding that we're together, it's us. And really, I think it's apt when that verse says that two become one.
One, yes.
That is how your approach is, as one. I think that's for me, that's one of the major ingredients, so to speak. Patience is another thing. You have to be patient, regardless of how right you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes your right may not be right. I don't know if it's you don't have to be right 100% of the time.
Right.
For it to be right, you don't have to be right.
I like that. For it to be right, you don't have to be right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's looking at the bigger picture. And I think this is where wisdom comes in. Where your wisdom will make you understand that, okay, perhaps at this time, even though I'm right, it is not right to be right. I have to invite things like that as you move. So yeah, I'll just keep quiet there. But yeah.
So I think, you know, the most amazing thing about that advice is that I remember when we were sat in the airport at Cancun airport for our honeymoon, and we bumped into this couple. who were out there celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. So similar period of time to how long you, Uncle Wale, and Tinuke have been married for. And so Ruth got talking to the woman, and I got talking to the guy. Oh, so what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, we're on our honeymoon. They're like, oh, they're on their 25th wedding anniversary. Oh, congratulations, congratulations. And I asked him, I was like, so what is the best advice you can give me, you know, that you've learned over the 25 years that you've been married for? And he said, and you won't believe this, Uncle Wale, he said, well, you can either be right or you can be happy.
Well, there you go.
So he basically said exactly the same
There
thing
you
he said. So yeah, interesting that you give that kind of advice.
Okay,
I always remember what the gentleman that married us, Alistair Taylor, the pastor that married us, said. And he said, Tinuke, if you want, naturally, he said, he started with Wale, so I was really excited. He was like, Wale, if you want to have a great marriage, make sure that you put Tinuke first in everything. So I was like, yes. Then he turned to me and he said, Tinuke, you want to have a great marriage, make sure that you put Wale first in everything. So, and I've realized that I'm quite a literal person. So I took that very much to heart in the sense that, and also when I first became a Christian, I was told this thing of, if you want to have joy, J-O-Y stands for Jesus, others, yourself. So that thing of Jesus, then others, then myself. So I think I've done it a bit too much where I've not given myself any time, but I did hold on to that greatly. Like I was like, okay, put Wale first, think about Wale first, consider Wale first, whether or not it was good for me or not, so to speak. I mean, you know, just trusting that obviously because God is in this, just by obeying in that sense, God would work it out. So I think for me, that has definitely been something that I've done. I've always said, I don't even know if Wale has done that, but it's irrelevant. Do you understand what I mean? For me, it was, you don't have to answer. But what I mean is that, you know, for me, it's irrelevant. It's what I am supposed to do. And you know, I always say this thing about you can't change anybody. You just have to do what you have to do. So I think for me, that's I guess that's the advice that I would give, that, you know, just, it's a selflessness thing. It's a selflessness thing.
Okay, now this has just reminded me of something again that women especially struggle with, this issue of submission. So, Ruth, were you advised to submit to your husband when you got married? And you submit? What do you actually, seriously, what do you think about this whole submission thing? Let's talk about that, and then we'll go back to Tinuke.
So I can feel his eyes on me wanting to know what I think. So I think definitely that Ayo is the spiritual head of our home. And I remember someone saying to me that well, they didn't kind of phrase it like that, but that sometimes women get very upset by the phrase submission in marriage. But really, if you respect the person, you know that they respect you, and ultimately that they honor and fear God above all else, that shouldn't be a problem. You know, you're not submitting to a dictator, hopefully. So I think with me, I found it, I wouldn't say easy, because I always like to tell the truth, but I trust that Ayo ultimately is doing his best and wants to honor God and wants to honor me in our marriage. I think in many ways, though, in different parts of our lives, whether it's finances or, you know, different life priorities, that one of us is sometimes stronger in that area and we let the other one lead. But yeah, in terms of overall spiritual headship in our marriage, I definitely say that's Ayo. But I think he has always helped me. Well, I found it easier because of the type of man that he is. And also I think he knows how to deal with the fact that I have a very strong personality. He does that in a very gracious way. Do you have anything to
Ruth, can I just ask this question? You said you found it a bit. What was the challenge initially? Why did you find it difficult to submit?
Because I think that
and also, sorry, what does submission mean to you?
Okay, so I'll give a general example in that if there's been areas where we have disagreed and I will be like, Ruth, ultimately I've prayed about this and I'm trusting that this is the right way. There's been times where I've had to be like, God, I don't agree with this decision, but actually for the sake of our marriage and for sake of peace in our home, I'm going to defer to Ayo and trust that he you know, knows what he's doing, that he's heard from you. And I think just the fact that I was single for 26 years, I'd never had a boyfriend before, I'm very independent. That was what made it, when I say a bit hard, because all of a sudden it's like another person who, and I think also just in my job, I'm used to being in a leadership position. So that's sometimes been challenging, where it's like, you know what, I don't agree. And normally I would really try to kind of, push my point. I'm just have said, God, I'm going to leave it to you, rather than be a wife who whines and complains and, you know, shouts the house down. So yeah, that's sometimes been where it's been a challenge, but he has made it easier.
I think the notion of submission is actually more onerous on the guy, particularly if you want to take the Ephesians 5:25 model, because obviously before Paul instructs the wife to submit, he instructs the man to love his wife as Christ loved the church. And, you know, that love was a love that, you know, meant that he had to, you know, forego his own life for the sake of the church. And so, and it's sequential. It's not woman submit first, man, it's the other way around. So the man has to love like Christ loved the church first, and then submits. You know, in the same way that because Jesus gave his life for us, we submit to him, Lord over us. And so I think when we talk about what has to happen first, it's always the case that the man has to show that sacrificial love first in order to be able to garner that submission from the wife. And I think that that's, for me, the way I see it, actually more onerous. So yeah, just a reflection that I've kind of picked up over the years.
Okay. Tinuke, before I ask you about the submission thing, there was a question that was sent in, which I thought it's very important. And the question was, because you talked about putting Wale first. So the question is, can putting your husband first sometimes be detrimental to the wife's mental health and well-being?
Yes, absolutely it can. And that's why when I said it, remember I said trusting God, trusting that God is in control. So I'm doing it based on the fact that it's God I'm trusting, not Wale. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely it can be, because I think that some women do go way too far in terms of putting their spouse first, and it is detrimental to their mental health. So yeah.
Okay. So did you have problems with, I guess you didn't, after that advice, you didn't have problems with submitting to Wale, did you?
Well, you see, I see submission very differently. Like you said to Ruth, what does submission mean to you? Submission to me means power, quite simply.
Explain that. What do you mean?
The reason for that, because I found, I don't know when it was, sometime I was doing some Bible, so years ago, and I realized that obviously, you know, the wife is a helpmeet, a helper for the husband, and the same word that was used for helper for the wife is the same word that was used for helper for the Holy Spirit. That's immediately just liberated me right there, because I'm like, if that, you know, so for me, I see it as power. Now, that does not mean you should abuse the power, but I think, as you know, in the end, the man is the one that has a helper. The people that have helpers can't do the job by themselves. They need help. You know what I mean? So I actually don't have any issue whatsoever at all with submission. I mean, where I do, there are things like what Ruth said, like if there's stuff that I don't think submission is stupidity. And I think a lot of the time people have looked at it like that. It isn't stupidity. If I disagree with something, I will be very open and, you know, I will say, well, I don't agree, but I'm backing you. You know what I mean? Then I will go to God and I will now fight with God. The man that you said I should submit to is about to make a stupid mistake. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my issue is not, I don't think, I mean, I don't know, I would like to hear what Wale has to say, but I don't think I've really had any issues submitting to him, because I actually don't see it as a negative thing at all. I see it as a very positive thing.
Okay. And Wale, what do you think?
So yeah, it's never been an issue. But it's never, for me, I've never actually even viewed submission as a thing. You know, we've been friends for a long time. And I think our relationship has a very solid base, which is our friendship and our understanding of each other.
Okay.
So I don't think that we've ever really, it's never been a submit to me. We've never been there, a submit to me kind of thing. And I think I've always loved. In fact, I've been loving for a long time, since she was there.
Since then.
And so I think for anybody, if, like Ayo said, if the man loves naturally,
yeah,
it won't even be a thing.
So I 100% agree with that. But even if the man is not loving naturally, the woman should be submitting. I don't feel like it's based on the man's love that the woman should submit. We are supposed to submit anyway. So whether or not my husband is loving me, I mean, obviously it makes it easier if he is, but whether or not,
definitely, yeah.
And same thing, whether or not I'm submitting, he should still be loving.
Actually, that brings me back to a point when I used to smoke, so Tinuke expressed her displeasure for my habit at the time, and I was like, I'll deal with it at some point. But I enjoyed smoking, so I kept on smoking. So all of a sudden, one day, I lit a cigarette, and it tasted foul. And I was thinking, what's going on here? So I put that out, and I lit another one, because I thought perhaps it was that particular stick.
Yeah.
The second stick tasted foul. And I'm like, man, so I think, geez, I can't stand smoking. And this is just like that. It was, and I remember it was a Sunday morning. Anyhow, so I squeezed that packet of cigarettes and I put the rest in the bin, not understanding what just took place. And from then, so that was the last time I smoked cigarettes. So it wasn't until about, I think it must have been about 10 years later, I find out that somebody had been praying behind my back in the prayer cell to stop me from smoking. And I thought, wow, how many things have I done thinking I was doing it within my control, that actually somebody else had been conniving with the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And alas, and I think that is very important when it comes to understanding how to approach the submission, being the Holy Spirit is your partner.
Yeah.
And will help you sort those things out if you do hand them over.
Yeah.
Sort it out. But yeah.
Tinuke has Wale has just revealed Tinuke's secret. And that's the secret a lot of women have. Seriously, ladies, just pray. Just don't even get involved in all that shouting, or just pray. And God will answer your prayers. Okay. Thank you, guys. So Ruth and Ayo, what would you say it'll be 3 years in September, it's September, right? It'll be 3 years in September. What has been the most challenging time during this 3-year period?
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that to become one actually starts at the altar. It's not kind of like the final process. It's not it's not something that happens in finality when you say I do.
Okay.
And I think that maybe at the start, naively, so looking back at it, I felt that, this should kind of mean that a lot of things click into place. But you realize, and I've realized, particularly over the early months, that actually, the start of marriage is actually the start of the process of two becoming one, and you're continually becoming one. And so there'll be things that I thought that we would just see the same way, or just move in the same direction on in the early stages, which it just didn't happen like that. And we would argue, and we'd have I mean, the first few months, to be fair to us, we did obviously address this through counseling, but we just saw so many things differently. Even in terms of kind of like, you know, just how we live together, how we do certain things in the house. Again, we're coming from different households, have different doing things, even just the most basic. So I think for me, just learning that lesson from the outset, that we're in a process of becoming one, and a continual process that doesn't really end throughout your marriage, was something that I definitely took away as a learning point, particularly after the first kind of like few months.
Yeah, I would say.
Ruth, I really want you to talk a bit more about that, because a lot of people don't understand that you're coming from two different households. You guys never lived together, and then one day you wake up the same bed, and you know, it's like, okay, what's happening, guys? So please talk a bit more about this.
So I think, yeah, that was one of the great things that our counsellor kind of shared with us, in terms of even just growing up in different households or with different kind of, although we're both Nigerian, I think culturally we're actually quite different in many ways, and just things that you pick up that you think are normal, you're then living with someone who that might be abnormal to them, and it doesn't mean either of you are right or the other one is wrong. They're just had different experiences, and you see things differently. So I think, yeah, that was definitely an adjustment. So for me, one of the things is, again, I'm in leadership positions a lot, but I'm also the eldest child. And sometimes I can be a bit bossy in terms of the way that I like the house to be. And it was a small example, but I always used to say...
Is that sometimes, or is it more than...
Well, yeah, I think she underplays it a bit, a tiny bit.
But he would always say, like, this isn't a showroom. This is actually like our home where we're living in. And just how I would be around the house, I think sometimes he felt a bit like, let's just, you know, relax. Even if it's messy for half an hour, we'll tidy it up later. And so I think just little things like that, I had to be really conscious of. You're sharing a home with another person, so even if you like things to be a certain way, they also need to feel at peace in their own home as well. So yeah, I think that was one of the biggest learnings for me. That
was a big one, particularly because Ruth likes all of this ornamental stuff in the house, and I'm just like, what is that? Like, you just need a sofa. It doesn't need to be like ornamental. I need to be able to like just slump in my sofa. Like, please just buy something sensible. So we asked a lot about even stuff like that, like, you know, how to do up the house. Right?
That was a big thing.
That was actually quite a big one, actually.
But Ruth, could it be also that you had this idea, this picture you had in your mind of how your home was going to be? You know, when I get married, my home is going to be like this or like that. So you had that in your mind, and
I think that's a lot of it. And also, I feel that, no shade intended, but everyone should play to their strengths. And yeah, I wouldn't say that like design is a strength. So for me, it was also like, why have such a strong opinion on something that you're not particularly skilled in?
Functionality over how pretty and how it looks, please.
But yeah, we've come to an understanding.
Is that me?
You muted on your other device. I think you need to mute on your other device.
I think the other thing has come on.
Hang on.
Do you know, I'm trying to avoid Mr. Housing.
how do I look at it? Because I think my voice has come out now on the other one.
And this one.
Yeah. So how do I get it?
There should be an X on the
There's
other
an X
phone.
at the top of the screen.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yay! Yes.
Oh gosh. I don't know what happened. Someone said you have a fourth guest. It was me. Okay, that's better now. Yeah, Tinuke, remember we talked about this having a perfect home. We had this conversation a few weeks ago. Can you remember?
I can't remember. What did I say? Is it when I said I feel like I'm trapped inside?
When you said that you have there's a certain way you like your home to be, but because of children and everything, so you just, can you remember?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm a very tidy, minimalist, person trapped inside.
Exactly the same.
But I'm no, but you see, but the difference is I'm trapped inside. If you come to my house, you won't even believe it, because I'm trapped inside this mess of family. Wale is not that person, so it's like after a while, I just thought, you know what, I can't kill myself. As long as it's clean, then we'll be in a clean mess, and that's because it's just So I think it's that thing of knowing. I mean, sometimes I do think that actually it's not that hard to put stuff where it belongs. Then first of all, I'll now accuse myself that maybe Ruth, you get me, yeah. Then I will now make excuses that okay, maybe I haven't made it clear where things belong. Everything has to have. I've been through it all. No, I'm just married to a man who doesn't see it like that, and his children, unfortunately, have followed him rather than me. But that's probably because they haven't been able to see me in this whole thing. But yeah, so it's one of those things that, I mean, really, when push comes to shove, doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like pick your battles. When in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter?
No.
So for me, very early on, I realized that no, if I was living by myself, I know exactly how my house would be. Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the
And
case.
Ruth, I'm actually like you too, and Tinuke, that's the truth. But especially when I had children, I was like, it doesn't matter now. Doesn't matter. The only thing that nobody touches in my house is my mug. Nobody touches it. So, any other thing they can touch, but don't touch my mugs. But yeah, okay. So Tinuke and Wale, married 24 years. How have you guys dealt with conflict in your marriage or relationship?
I think we kind of answered this earlier on. I have never. You see, I feel like it takes two people to fight. As in, if you don't rise to the occasion, then the person will look like an idiot shouting at themselves. So I have always made it a point that I'm not going to. Generally, I think really from the start of the marriage, actually, where I'm just not going to. So I will not rise. And that's not to say that one is always picking a fight. Because that's how it sounded.
For a moment there, I was like,
no.
Who's that person that's always shouting? I was looking.
I'll tell you about that shouting thing, because that's another thing. But no, it's like, yes, we disagree on things. I will always make it clear that, okay, I do agree, but I'm not going to let it get to a point where, I don't see the point in that, and I will take it back to God. So my way of dealing with conflict is prayer, separate prayer. So, but I will, it's not, I don't run away from it in the sense that I don't deal with it and say, okay, I don't agree or whatever, but I'm not going to get it to a point where it becomes a shouting match or it's going to ruin anything, because I don't see the point of that. Again, it's another thing, like you kind of have to, I guess if it was that important, maybe if it was something really, but we've never had any like argument that is like life or death that, I'm so passionate about. Everything else is like, okay, you know what, is it going to kill me not to, and it really isn't. So I'm very much like, okay, as much as it disturbs me, I will disturb God. But there's no point, because there's no point once you get into, emotions are high. Once you start getting into a debate, a conflict, once emotions are high, you're going to say things you regret. It's just not. So really for me, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'll go and pray about it, and then we can talk about it later. So it's not about sweeping it under the carpet, but it's about in that moment, do I really have to go there? No, I don't.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Let's answer some questions for the single people, single ladies and gentlemen that might be here. So, red flags. Let's talk about red flags. What are the red flags that you think couples should look out for whilst dating? Either couple, Ayo, Ruth, or Tinuke and Wale.
So I think for me, obviously, when you're starting, it's not necessary. You don't want to tell the whole world, relationships are private. But one of the things often, just from talking to friends, is that if you're dating someone and for what I would consider kind of ridiculous length of time, they're keeping you a secret. So you don't know their friends, you don't know their families, you don't know their mentors, you don't know their pastors, that your relationship is really isolated, just the two of you. Yeah. To me, that's always a red flag, because the stories you normally then hear is that oh, he actually is in a relationship as well with somebody else on top of being in a relationship with you, or actually they're just a very dodgy person. So I think, yeah, that's one of the things, is after a reasonable length of time, when you've established that you want to be in a serious and meaningful relationship, if you're still a secret to their inner circle, to me, that's a massive red flag. I think, yeah, I think we would all say that anyone who's dishonest, particularly with small things, I think that to me is always concerning. Like, you know, lying in general, but especially people who lie about things that are inconsequential. Clearly, that's a habit that, yeah, personally, I don't want to deal with. So, yeah, I would say those are two big ones for me.
Great.
I would agree with those. I mean, I think for me, I'm an affable person, but it takes me a while to kind of get to know someone or kind of open up. I mean, I think I'm quite different to Ruth in that way, and that Ruth, I think, is very much quite quick to open up to people.
Okay.
And whereas that, sorry,
it takes you time.
And whereas I think it takes me time. So I think that for me, a lot of the kind of things which I would consider red flags or things that I think wouldn't vibe with me, I would have realized them before I've committed to that person. That's just the way that I am. Okay. So I've actually never been in a situation before where I've kind of been like, oh, that's a red flag. I'm going to pull away from this courtship or pull away from this relationship. I think maybe the one general piece of advice is obviously to take the time to identify the things that you have for yourself said are red flags. And, you know, if it takes you longer, don't be unapologetic for the amount of time that it takes you to identify that. If you're the kind of person like Ruth, who, you know, is quite quick to open up, then you want to make sure that you are in a place of comfort over those things that you consider red flags. And I think that's probably the one bit of advice I can give, because I've never been in a situation where I've had to kind of pull back away from something because I didn't know that the person was like this, and I gave them my heart before I was able to see that issue or that red flag for myself.
I think I just remembered a couple, just particularly with our generation. I think one, like, we love using social media, and I think social media is great, but I think particularly me, you sometimes are on my account. I think, yeah, just social media, particularly in our generation, can play an interesting and sometimes challenging role in relationships. And so I think sometimes a red flag for me is people who, you know, if I met a guy and he's more interested in like how our relationship looks as opposed to making sure that behind the scenes our relationship is actually intact and growing and healthy, that is a red flag. And I think also, who are the type of people that they surround themselves with? Because, yeah, as we've all said, there's no relationship that's going to be perfect, and you might have challenges, you might just go through difficulties in life or your relationship, and have they surrounded themselves with people who are grounded, who, if you're a Christian, are those people godly, and will their friends or their mentors tell them the truth, as opposed to someone who seems that either they're surrounding themselves with bad company or people who just have bad advice or who they don't listen to. I think that for me is a big thing, because in the beginning everything is going to look rosy, but when things get difficult, who are the circle that they are going to rely on?
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Ayo. Tinuke.
I mean, I think for me, what I would say is, you know, anybody can be kind, but that doesn't make you a kind person. So I think for me, it's just look at how they treat people. You know, I have a lot of people that will treat me nicely, treat me well, but they're not treating other people well. So for me, that doesn't count. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you treat it? If you're treating the gate man in a particular manner, then you treat him. I'm always looking at how people treat people. So it's the fact that you're kind to me, or I have nothing to say that is negative about you in terms of our relationship, doesn't mean that you're a kind person. Doesn't mean that you, you know. So I always look at how people treat other people, because, you know, I guess you tend to treat people that you love or you fancy in a certain way. You know, or if you're trying to impress them or something, I don't know. But, you know, the fact that I'm treated, because, you know, I always say there's a particular person I'm thinking of as I say this, that, you know, he's extremely kind to me. Lovely. I can't say anything about him, but he's not a very nice person, because I've seen him with other people, but I can't in my relationship with him say that, because with me he's been 100%, but I've seen him.
Do you know, that thing is so true. I had a conversation with someone and she said the same thing. Really nice to her, but like the way he treated other people, that's why she broke up the relationship. So
for me, I think that would be my thing. Just how does he treat other people?
Perhaps because it's only a matter of time
Yeah.
before that same treatment comes around. It comes home to roost, as it were. I mean, I really don't know, but I would say if somebody is keeping you from nurturing your relationships,
Other relationships. Okay.
then perhaps that's a red flag.
Isolating you. So
Isolating you.
Yeah.
I think that's a major red flag.
Yeah.
No matter how much they seem to be loving you and, you know, being all over you, if they're not letting you nurture out the relationships, then there's something wrong.
True.
That's a major red flag. The kind of people that keep you away from friends and family.
Yeah.
No, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's really, I mean, clips in what everybody else has said.
Yeah. You know, this thing that Ruth said, I just remember now about keeping you away, or not, let's not tell anybody about the relationship yet. Come on, ladies, you're so valuable. Anyone will want to put you out there and let everybody know that we're dating. So if he starts that, please don't. Just leave the relationship, I beg. Okay, another question that was sent in. What do you do if you're dating someone but you have nothing in common except that you're Christians? You're both Christians. What do you do? So we don't have anything in common, but I guess maybe you can say we both. Well, I don't know whether they both love God or but they're both Christians or they both attend church, because you know they're different things. It's one thing to love God. It's another thing to be a Christian. It's another thing to just attend church. So
I think maybe just from my experience was that when I was growing up, I went on this very conservative Christian camp where there was this book that we were recommended called I Kiss Dating Goodbye. I mean, sadly, the guy has actually renounced his faith entirely, but the premise of the book was basically saying that in order to have boundaries, essentially you should like date in a group so you don't expose yourself to temptation. So the issue with that book was that a lot of people on that camp ended up getting married when they were literally out of university, but that's not a problem in and of itself, but also that the only really thing they had in common with the people that they married was that they were Christians, and also they kind of dated them in groups, so you didn't really have a lot of time to get to know that person. And sadly, just from that camp, a lot of people that I grew up with, they then got divorced very early and realized that actually just being Christian or from the same denomination, when they actually got to know each other, realized that that wasn't enough to keep a marriage. You know, I'm sure that there might be examples of other people who, being Christians, that's enough to kind of keep them together. But I think I always say that I was my best friend and we have so much fun in life as much as we're different. But our faith is obviously the foundation, but it's not the complete entirety of our relationship. Like, we love going out, we love going to eat, we love friendships, we love business together. So yeah, just personally, I think that life is an arc, and we're obviously only 6 years into our relationship. But I think as life grows and things become complicated, if that's the only thing that you have in common, you might kind of find it, one, hard to sustain, but also not that enjoyable if there's nothing else there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, marriage is you've got layers to relationships in the same way that you have layers to any relationship that the most important relationship that you're in, your marital relationship, has to have layers to it, because it's the one that you have to sustain over the period of a lifetime. So, you know, if all you have in common is, yes, foundational element of you sharing the same faith, you know, there are many different paths and, you know, to that destination point of heaven, you know, in eternity for so many different people. You know, if it's just about, you know, you sharing the same faith, then you know, you could marry practically anybody who comes to you and says that, you know, they're a lover of Jesus, you know. And I think that when we talk about being unequally yoked, it can be in so many different ways in addition to that faith aspect. You know, it can be in, you know, your life ambitions. It can be in where you want to kind of, how you want to raise your children. It can be in your value sets. It can be in your principles. It can be in so many different ways. So I think that alignment across the board is quite important in order to be able to more easily sustain the lifelong relationship of a marriage.
Thank you. Yep, I agree. Tinuke and Wale?
And I think for me, when you talk about Christianity, and I mean, if we're talking about Christianity, not just going to church type of thing, I think that's a value thing. That's about your values. And I don't think that God took the time to make each of us individually and give us all the different, quirks and things that he gave each of us for us not to, like live in who we are type of thing. Do you understand what I mean? So I feel like, yes, Christianity is a good thing to start from a value point of view. But if that is all you have, like I said, you can marry anybody. I mean, you know what I mean? There's so much more to us than just that. Is a very key element, because I think it's very important that you have the same values and you come from the same place in that. But I do think that, there's just so much more to us, and it doesn't. Christianity is not. It's like, it's when they say, it's the same thing they say with marriage, when they say it's love enough. No, it's not. You know what I mean? So it's like, is Christianity enough just for you to, it probably isn't in the long term. I don't think so.
Uncle Wale? Yep, we agree. Okay. Now, folks, if you've got questions, please put the questions in the question thing so they can answer. I'm sure you guys probably have questions for them. Now, let's talk about habits. How have you guys lived with the, I was going to say bad habits, good habits of your spouses? How have you handled those habits?
Yes, can I take this one?
Yes.
So when I was in university in Egypt, there was a church I used to go to, an Anglican church, and they had like a library at the back of books that you could read. Now, till today, I cannot remember the name of the book. I don't remember anything. I just remember a paragraph from that book. And bear in mind, I wasn't married at this point in time. And the lady was basically talking about marriage and whatnot. And she said, there's some things that you have to do naturally, and there's some things you have to do supernaturally. And she gave the example of, when I wash the dishes after a meal, I do that naturally. When I'm washing the dishes for the fourth time, I'm doing it naturally. So she was basically saying that, sometimes and that's what I do with habits. I'm just like, when I'm picking up the socks for the 25th time, I'm like, Lord, I'm doing this for you, supernatural. And that's, I mean, that's how I deal with it, to answer the question. Because I think that, you can allow it to get you so upset and so riled up, and then it will now become like a fight because of a sock. Does it even make sense? But obviously valid feelings, and then of course it's not just the sock. It's okay, they didn't take their plate to the kitchen the day before. This is not you. This is not you. I'm talking about habits in general. You do fall into some of them.
Oh, I see. I was thinking.
You do fall into some of them, but not all. No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm giving examples, guys. It's not Wale. It's not Wale.
No. I just thought I'd clarify.
He just takes his plate to the kitchen, and anyway. But what I mean is that sometimes I think you just have to. I mean, for me, I'm very much about the bigger picture. What is the action? How is this action going to affect the whole thing? So if I make a big deal about this one sock, how is it going to, do you know what I mean? As in, we can actually like have a ruined day. It can become a big deal. Meanwhile, all I had to do was pick it up. Do you know what I mean? And then mention in passing later that, oh, it would be nice if you picked up your sock, when I'm calmer and whatnot. So for me, I do a lot of in terms of dealing with habits, and of my children as well. I mean, obviously, I do it supernaturally. So I'm like, I will do some of it naturally and most of it supernaturally.
Okay, well, since you spoken, I mean, perhaps I need to
clarify.
No, there's nothing to clarify. I realized that you were talking about your kids, but first, we are who we are, and that's part of who. So we've married this person. We've chosen to love this person, live with them. So if it's not a detrimental habit, then it's just a habit. At the end of the day, it really is no big deal. Really, it's no big deal. Because if you think about it, a lot of the time that we might be irritated or, you know, slightly irked by these habits, it's really on us. It's really about us. Our, how shall I say it? Our tolerance level, as opposed to necessarily the other person, if we look at it in the grand scale. So, like I said, if it's not a detrimental thing, then that's okay. Go see Wale, you know, no problem, you know, and you move on. It's not a big deal. And really, that's it, I think.
Okay,
because nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Ruth and Ayo?
I think that's an area I feel I've actually grown in patience and tolerance in a way I didn't think that I had. So one of Ayo's habits is he just eats really loudly, and I'm to the point where sometimes I've recorded him because I'm like, why just eat? Like, this is just so
okay.
weird.
So just
you can make amendments after.
No. So I'm going to make an amendment right now. We're talking to Manners Matter in Rosario here. Like, when I'm in public and I'm eating.
No, yeah, in public, but I mean at home.
Yeah, because I'm at home.
Okay, but he just eats really loudly. And I remember
Ayo, you have to practice at home. Because if you don't...
That's not again, literally. If I'm eating in public, my etiquette is on point.
So you're more aware. You're more aware when you're outside.
Yeah.
But I remember one time I then was just thinking, wow, he's going to be eating this loudly for the next 60 years. And then it just dawned on me that why complain? Like, I can put my headphones on, I can go to a different room. So yeah, I think for me, with your bad habits, it's something I've just learned. That's just who, you know, he doesn't see the value in eating quietly. That's unfortunate for him, but we keep it moving.
You don't see the value in eating loudly. If you don't want him to eat, you're gonna go like to another room. Like, you don't have to be in the room when I'm eating.
What my bad habits then?
I don't know. The one, okay, so interestingly enough, the one bad habit that you still haven't got over yet is I have this natural reflex where I kind of play with my beard, and unfortunately, there's some of them kind of like drop out occasionally, and she gets really annoyed about it.
But it's to do with the house thing that I just like the house to be a certain way.
She doesn't like to see little specks of hair in her perfectly crafted book stack on the coffee table.
Yeah,
apparently.
But I'm learning.
Ruth, you need Ruth, you need to chill. You need to chill. You know,
but to be fair, I have learned from Isle. I do admire. He's just a really relaxed person. In a way where I'm like, wow, it just must be so nice to go through life just so chilled.
Yeah, and so conversely, it means that I'm able to deal with any of her quirks. To be honest, they're just like a water off a duck's back. I just literally any quirk that she has, like her.
Yeah, but I do admire
interest in singing at times. You know, when she thinks nobody's listening, you know, and you know, I know that the neighbors are here, and I'm thinking, what's going on? I leave her to do it because I know that's her thing. You know, she likes to do it. And I don't record either. I let her do her thing.
Well, actually, before I go, there's some questions, but before I ask those questions, Tinuke, I think it was Tinuke that talked about tolerance. Now, again, it's an assumption, but I've heard a lot of people say that the millennials are not tolerant in marriage. And that's why a lot of I don't know whether I love because I don't know the statistics, but that there'll be a few marriages have broken down because of no tolerance. So once something happens, like, oh, I can't deal with it, you we'll go back to mommy's house or daddy's house or go back to your flat, whatever it is. Do you think that's true in your generation?
So our generation?
Yeah. No, the question's not for us. Is it for us?
Yeah, it's for you guys.
Yeah, and I think it's a problem, not just in our relationships, but in our careers, that the idea of being long-suffering, we just feel like almost entitled to having the life that we want. So I see a lot of things on Instagram that are like, you know, create the life that you want. Manifesting.
Vibrations.
Don't settle for anything less. And I think that that's a real problem because whether it's in our career or in our relationships or any other area of life, we have to be steadfast. That's how you make it to the end of doing anything. Whereas I think in our generation, just a lot of the attitude is, I deserve better than this. And sometimes I deserve a perfect life or an easy life, and therefore I'm not going to wait around to deal with this rubbish. I think in a way the sad thing is a lot of that, I think, comes from what we've seen older generations sometimes have to go through. And sometimes we might have seen an extreme version, and that can then colour our view to think, I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to cut it off now before it gets to that point. So yeah, I definitely think it's a problem, and something that as a generation we need to be mindful of, not just in relationships but every area of our lives.
I completely agree, and I think that actually this is something that we can learn from the baby boomer generation, that they were steadfast, and there are lessons, and I'm not saying that you should tolerate things that are regressive, and tolerate abuse and all this kind of. I'm not saying that's not what I'm saying. I just want to just kind of put that qualifier there, but there are lessons to be learned from the way that our parents, in particular, that our parents' generation were able to really hustle and kind of think about the long term, to not give up and not give up when things are hard, in order to build the lives that we have now. And I think that that's going to be important for us to imbibe some of that, as we look to obviously pass the baton on to the next generation.
Wale and Tinuke, can you speak? Can you chip in?
I hear it a lot, and I think it probably is true. I do think that it's a bit unfair, if you like, because that's the generation they've grown up in. They've grown up in the microwave world where everything is quick, everything is, you know what I mean? So if we're not taking the time out to actually teach them about, like we said, long suffering and whatnot, how do we expect them to actually bother? You know what I mean? Because the world is such a different place from when we grew up. It's like everything is just quick. It's, the whole social media is, everything is, you get an answer immediately, everything. So if we don't take the time out to actually educate them and let them know that there's more to life, if you like, than this quick, get it quick, I don't know, get quick, rich quick schemes and all this, I don't know, everything happens so fast. Then I do feel that obviously, they're adults and you feel like there's a responsibility on them to actually know this sort of stuff themselves. But if you're only a product of how you grew up, what you grew up around and everything. So if you've grown up and everything is, social media, Insta, microwave, quick, then of course you're not going to have long suffering if nobody has taken the time out to, instill it in you or teach it to you otherwise. You know what I mean? So whilst I agree, I kind of feel like, yes, there's onus on them, but there's also onus on us, the older generation, to have kind of nipped it in the bud, or to have at least explained to them that, there's more to it than this. This is just, because it's a completely different life that they're growing up in from what we grew up in.
Yeah. So, okay, what can we do?
We suffered.
How can we help them? Wale, how can we help? Your generation X, their millennials. How can we help them?
Education.
Okay.
All the ills, I think, that the world is suffering and is going to suffer, will be from a lack of education. And when I say education, I'm not talking about the 1 + 1 is 2 sort of education, but real education in all the different aspects. It's almost like I think education, and when I say educating, allows people to really evolve properly. Otherwise, they're evolving based simply on what they perceive. And perceptions can be very wrong. And that's why, a lot of the time, like you mentioned here, we're never going to go through what that person went through or what it seemed like that person went through. But having all the information, it's almost like having half the information. The danger of half the information as opposed to all of the information. And that is what I think is education. And so this could be through mentoring, what we're doing now, perhaps even, that sort of thing. And that is what will help them to evolve in a more robust manner, I think.
Yeah. And I really agree with that point, because I even use kind of like my career mentors as an example. When I've been impatient for progression and change, it's actually my Christian business and career mentors who have told me their story and shared, their story about how they've navigated to very senior positions within their industry, over the last 20 years, how they've navigated. That's kind of made me think, well, you know what, maybe I also need to show a bit of patience as well. And so, like you say, Uncle Wale, it's that passing on of information. Say, look, when I was in my early 30s, I was in a similar position to you, but I did this, and look, 20 years later, here's where I am. And I think that constant conversation is important. And obviously, platforms like this provide, the chance to change that perspective, because I think without that, me and Ruth could well be caught up in that generational, urge for things to happen, yesterday quickly. So I definitely think that the mentorship thing is huge.
Can I suggest something? And I don't know if you guys are already doing it, but can you mentor them? Can you take them on board?
Do they want to be taken on board now?
I don't say if they don't want to take them on board. Because seriously, I know that I believe that you guys have could learn a lot from them. And also, what I love about Tinuke and Wale is that they're not your conventional. How do I put it? I don't want to get into trouble now. But no, seriously, if you, I don't know, but I think it'll be good for you guys to mentor each other. I just think
I'm up for that.
Definitely.
I'm up for that. Yeah, I'm up for that.
Because you guys are so right. Mentoring is so important, and I loved again what Tinuke and Wale said. We have a responsibility to the younger generation, and we can't keep blaming them and saying, they're this, they're that, if we haven't done what we should do. So great. So you found mentors.
Yay.
Yay. Oh my good. Okay, let's take a question. How do you get over not feeling good enough for someone? Maybe you feel they're more polished, have a better social circle than you. How do you get over that? I guess it's for single.
So, do you know what? For me, you have to come to marriage as a whole person. Do you understand what I mean? So, I think, yes, two become one, but it's two whole people become one, as opposed to 50% of Wale and 50% of Tinuke become one. It's not like that. It's two whole people. So in relation to this question, what I would say is that person needs to become whole. There's inner work that person needs to do themselves, because yes, the other person is probably more polished than you. Yes, they're probably more educated or whatever. But does that really matter? You have to know who you are, love who you are. You have to accept who you are, and you have to be okay with who you are. And that's where, and then you come as a whole person. And yes, you know that the person is more polished, more whatever. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Yeah. I know it does matter a lot of the time to a lot of people, but I think part of the problem is that there's so many people, and women in particular, I think, that come to relationships expecting to be, made whole by the other person. Nah, you come whole. And then, and that's a lot of work that you have to do yourself. And it's sometimes painful work. It's a it's long-term work. It's everything. But I don't think there's anything wrong with you not being matched in terms of your education, in terms of your whatever. Yeah. But the only time where there will be something wrong is when you yourself are not confident that you are good enough. And that is nothing to do with the other person. That's you. That's the inside work that you have to do yourself.
I have a bit of a different theory to this particular question. I think that if you found yourself within the same space, then you are up to the task. Now, it might not be the complete or the final product yet, but if you are in the same space, then you are up to the task. If you weren't, you wouldn't be in the same space.
Okay.
I think I want to leverage what Auntie Tinuke said and talk about, being fully confident and knowing fully what you bring to the table as an individual. And I think that, we all bring different things to the table. We all have different attributes that we can bring to the relationship that we're in. And I think it's about being fully understanding of those things. And, so for me and Ruth, for example, I know that there are people who I've met within her circle who have been a blessing to me and to us, and vice versa. Yeah. So I think it's just about understanding that we have different things that we can bring to the relationship and just being able to stand behind that. But again, it comes down to this issue of wholeness and kind of being able to understand who you are as a person. And when you do understand that, then you know what you're bringing, and you know how it complements. And you have to know yourself in order to know how what you bring can complement with the other person.
Yeah. I think, for me, we all have insecurities. That's part of life. But I don't necessarily think that we can put pressure on another person to sort those insecurities out for us. And even like when me and I started dating, so I referred at the beginning to how I knew him. And the reason I knew him is that there were lots of girls who fancied him. So that's why his name was like often around in social circles. I'd never had a boyfriend. I'd never been asked out. I was very popular. He's just like one of those people. And so obviously in a earthly way, you could say that someone who's good looking and has a lot of people after them, and I've never been asked out, that clearly we were very different. But I think I was always aware that this is who I am, this is what I bring to the table, and I was confident in that. If he decided that that wasn't for him and he wanted to be with somebody who, other people might say matched him, that's up to him, and that would be, his life decision. Yeah. So I think, it's just really important to be confident in who we are, because that's also going to be attractive to the other person, rather than worrying about, in a sense, earthly standards of looks or connections or whatever. At the end of the day, marriage is long and can be difficult. Yeah. Those things at the end of the day, they don't matter. They can also change in the long run. So I think from my personal experience, that's what I would say.
And it's interesting that actually the person that I was talking to before I met you would kind of have ticked the boxes of kind of that popular it girl, as it were. But I realized, like, literally within weeks into that interaction, that that's not what I wanted. When I encountered Ruth, it was almost like I was.
He always said he had his spiritual eyes open.
I usually say my third eye. But fair enough. I knew I was looking for something different at that point, and when I saw her, I knew that I'd found something different.
Oh, okay. I guess let me ask this question now. Ayo and Wale, what exactly are men looking for in a woman? What are they looking for? Because we say, the men are. The women are there, lots of women, but then the men are just, I don't know. What are they looking for? What do they want in a woman?
I'll let you go first.
It's funny because I think with my generation, and I think we've spoken about this a lot. With my generation, a lot of guys, and we're visual as a gender. We tend to be quite visual guys. And full disclosure, when I met Ruth was wearing
a brown jacket, a cardigan, pleated purple skirt.
Yeah, so basically
ballet pumps and tights.
Ruth was wearing what I would not consider my typical kind of go-to in terms of her kind of get-up. Like, she just wasn't wearing. Like, those cardigans are
gone, a thing of the past.
They're we completely transformed the wardrobe. But the problem with a lot of us guys is that we want that girl that has the alignment of values. We want that girl that has, the good upbringing, good family, knows what she's doing, has her head screwed on right, will be a good mother. Most guys want all those things, but we also want the visual too. And so we get caught up in this no man's land of looking for looking for those things, but also looking for what is visually appealing as well. And oftentimes, I'm not saying you don't have really attractive women that have both, but I'm saying that oftentimes it's what the woman is showing is what you're going to basically go for. And so I think oftentimes us guys get caught up in the middle of that, whereas actually a lot of the times you just need to just be focused on the character aspects, as a starting point. Because with Ruth, like I said, we didn't meet like, at a bar with her kind of dressed to the nines, but I knew that when I kind of finished speaking to her that, this is somebody that is special that I can build a life with.
Okay.
So I actually think that a lot of the onus is on the guys to reframe how and what it is that they're looking for, not just from a visual perspective, but also from the kind of like values. I think that's part of the problem.
Okay. So guys, I guess they're sometimes confused. They really don't know what they want.
So I don't think it's that we don't know what we want. I think it's that
I think a lot of you want somebody that doesn't exist. That and also, yeah, I think that some of the issues I encounter is that women, I think we sometimes have a bit more humility in our reflection or opinion of ourselves.
Okay.
Whereas I think guys, any type of guy will be telling you that he's looking for this. And I'm thinking, one, she doesn't exist, but you've come with a lot of confidence, assuming that that woman is definitely going to be
interested in you.
Whereas, I think also the numbers sometimes just plays into guys' favour. Is that you can be any type of guy and still there will be women who will be interested. But I think some of what I see with guys is that makeup of that woman, I haven't met many women who are like her who you could actually then build a life with.
Yeah, because the problem is that particularly in this Instagram age, most guys want the girl who is hot. Like, she's that girl that's, she's correct, she's little. And it's just like, look, well, again, like as we've said, a lot of the girls that, are hot and, have those value things.
They might not have the values that you want.
Well, one, they might not have the values that you want. And two, they're not necessarily trying to show you, that with who, they're not trying to show you that they're hot. They're trying to just show you that they're an individual.
Okay.
And so I think that's a problem that a lot of guys kind of get caught up with.
Okay.
I think so. Okay, I'll do it like bullet points. So one misconception, for instance, that women have is that men love a lot of makeup, for instance. A lot of the time, men would rather very simple makeup.
But excuse me, are you saying that women put on makeup for men?
I have no idea why they do it. And I'm not even supposing why they do it. I'm just saying that if that is the reason why, then it's not necessarily a plus.
Okay. So men like simple, keep it simple.
Yes, men do, because it will take them to who they will be seeing every day.
Okay.
As opposed to who they might. Do you see what I mean? This is not actually the person.
Okay.
Men like to see, or they like to see who they would be seeing. They can relate more with who they think they might be seeing every day.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also again because men generally have, I think, an ego.
Mm.
If the first foot put forward by a woman is an ego which is larger than theirs, it might actually prove a problem for the guy.
Okay.
Not because she has a large ego, but that is, again, we're talking about perception. If he doesn't take the time to get to know the person, then that's already a put off. I think they also want somebody they can be friends with, as opposed to be clinical with.
What does that mean?
Clinical being almost like they have to put up an act.
Oh, okay, I see. Thank you.
This is where you hear guys say things as like, "Wow, she's so real. She's so down to earth."
Okay. Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's because that's who they would rather relate with, that sort of person, rather than. And so I use the word clinical because, it's not. It's all because it can almost come across like an act.
Okay.
like I said, well, of course, men are very visual, but really, as visual as we are, most of us, I'm not saying all, but most of us tend to be a bit deeper than just the surface. So yes, the beauty and all that is, but nah, it's more about the character.
Okay.
It's more about the character. A man will recognize, well, a good man will recognize good character. And I think that would be more important.
Sorry, I'm laughing because somebody said most men will say, I want a natural woman. However, they are approaching women who are dressed to the nines.
So to that point, I think it's important to distinguish between a man who wants to, and particularly within the dating game, a man who wants to settle down and a man who just wants arm candy and who just wants to date. I think if a man wants to settle down, then yeah, obviously he wants to be attracted to the woman that he's with.
Yeah.
But you know, but at the same time is more interested in their values and the things that, you know, she's bringing to the table as a potential spouse and partner for life. Whereas if a man is literally just looking for arm candy, then yeah, of course he's looking for the person that's dressed in the nines. Of course he is. So I think, and I think that obviously it makes it more difficult for you if a guy's approach is literally so much kind of based on, you know, how good it is that you're looking. I think we've lost.
Yeah, they'll probably
I think they're drawn back. But I think it's a lot more difficult for a woman to kind of be able to judge a guy's intent if, you know, he's all about how she's looking and all about kind of like how attractive she looks.
Yeah.
Obviously that's important, but after a while, if that's still what's kind of sustaining his interaction, then you've got to question what he's actually interested in.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Wale, did we interrupt you? Do you want to finish, or is there anything?
No, that was NEPA.
Okay, let's answer a question. How do you manage and deal with your spouse's or spouse-to-be's family?
How do you manage and deal? You see, I don't even like that question because it's saying manage and deal.
Manage.
Already.
Yeah, it says manage and deal. Yeah.
And I think one of the things, certainly for me, is I always have to remind myself that if not for them, my husband wouldn't exist. So you know what I mean? So because of that, that immediately puts it in a different, like, I mean, half of them are on here watching, so I'm being very careful what I'm saying. But I have, you know what I mean? So I think you kind of have to remember that all the time. Of course, you're coming from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
You're coming, and the way that they do things in their family is probably not going to be the way you do things in family. So it's about understanding. I mean, I think one of the things I had to remind myself, you know, is like as a mother, after I've had a child, I've raised the child for, 26 years or whatever. That has been my child. And then the child now marries and is supposed to leave and cleave. How do I expect the mother to just release after all those years? You know what I mean? So you have to kind of be considerate about the other person's position as well. That, okay, fine, yes, my husband needs to live and cleave, yes, but in the end, his family have been with him for this long, and I'm now suddenly telling them, whilst the husband himself has got into the position where he knows he's getting married, he's getting ready to leave his family, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The family themselves are not necessarily going through that same process of getting ready to release their child or release their. Do you understand what I mean? So it's about consideration and understanding that it will take longer. Something that has happened, you know, somebody that you've raised for 26 years, in 4 months, you're not going to give them up or stop doing or change the way you do things with them because you're just not going to. So I think for us as spouses, it's important that we understand that and that we make allowances for that to, you know, to allow them to basically, all of us to settle into, you know, and then deal with it. But I always remind myself that if not for them, he wouldn't be here.
What's that? Is it Sister Sledge? We are family. And that's the bottom line. We are all family. Period. That's it.
Okay. Are you on Ruth?
I think one of the things I'm really grateful for growing up is my grandparents, because my dad's dad sadly died when he was younger, but the way my mum's parents were with my dad, it's almost like you would think that he was actually their first child. And they were so welcoming and so, yeah, just embraced him from as far as back as I can remember. And same way with my mum's siblings, her cousins, her family. So I think I'm grateful that I had such an amazing example to see, both on that side and also my dad and his siblings and his cousins. That, yeah, we grew up kind of seeing that when, particularly the family that you're marrying into, them embracing my dad made such an impression on me. So, yeah, I think that that's one of the important things is it's, yeah, easy when that also happens.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say in terms of, you know, how to manage that interaction is that it's a constant process that, you know, will need an evolution of attitude over time. I think one of the things that I've realized is that, you know, there will always be pinch points, whether it's, you know, even from the outset, the marriage itself, or when kids come, or when their family events and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's about being able to just manage the sensitivities. And I think that we're still on the journey of kind of like getting to a good place on that quite early on. Like, you know, like Auntie Tinuke said, you know, it's not going to be a straight thing whereby, you know, because we're leaving and cleaving, the releasing on the other side is happening in a simultaneous way. And I think that's probably, candidly speaking, that's probably a reflection that we're at. Well, that's a point where we're at as well, where we're still doing that alignment, as it were, where the leaving and cleaving is happening and then the releasing is happening at the same time. So definitely it's still a journey point for us. So I guess obviously when we have those mentorship sessions with Uncle Wale and Tinuke, we'll definitely love to hear how they navigated through it over the years.
Another thing,
it's a constant journey, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
I think it's a constant journey anyway.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, just the other thing to add is, again, although my parents are both Nigerian, they, yeah, had very different cultural backgrounds. And I think in terms of how the question was phrased about managing and dealing, the onus is also on each spouse to help their spouse deal and manage with their family, you know, because we've all been raised differently, and helping your spouse understand how your family operate and how they work. I think that that's also important, because your spouse hasn't known your family for longer than you've been together. So if there are established ways of doing things in your family that have been there for 20 or 30 years, the things that are right and, you know, proper, I think that it's important that you help your spouse understand that as well.
You know, actually, this issue of families, especially, I must say, especially mothers-in-law. Oh my goodness! Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've heard so many people complain. Well, from the mother-in-law side, from the daughter-in-law side, and I said I'm going to do something about this. So there's going to be a hangout about mothers-in-law very soon, because what I was saying to my friend when we're talking about is that in this day and age, I don't even think this should be an issue, especially for our generation, Tinuke. I'm not even talking about the older generation, but those of us who have children that are getting married now, we shouldn't be having challenges with our son-in-laws or daughters-in-law, things like that. So we need to deal with it and nip it in the bud. It's not happening, not on my watch. Okay, gosh, there's so many questions. Let's see. Someone said that if you keep picking up the socks, this is for you, Tinuke. If you keep picking up the socks, how will the person learn?
So my response to that is, if the person hasn't learned at middle age,
Yeah.
then I don't know. Not that Wale drops his socks. Disclaimer. Not that Wale drops his socks.
Yeah. Again, I have to interject there. You know, she's talking about her sons. Yeah. And one daughter.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you help your son or son?
No, so yes, I mean that valid point there in the sense that, you know, one has to teach them to do things. And I mean, and I think, well, this is actually
and please, you have to teach them so that their wives are not picking up.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So I was even going to say on a parenting level, it's a completely different conversation. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. We have to finish that too. It's been really, really, really good. It's really good. One question or two more. When you guys don't agree on a major issue, so buying a car, buying a house, children, how do you reach a final decision? I said buying children, sorry.
You haven't reached that side yet.
How do you guys reach a final decision?
I go with Wale.
Okay.
But you remember what I said earlier? I go with Wale, but I go to Jesus.
Yes.
So I go with Wale, but I go to Jesus. So then eventually, and the prayer that I always say is a very simple prayer. I'm like, Lord, if he's right, let me know. If I'm right, let him know.
Okay.
Simple.
Anyone else? That was good.
No, so here's the thing. Tinuke is generally right most of the time.
Okay.
So I tend to go with her instinct on a matter.
Okay.
A lot of the time.
But you learned that, haven't you?
Yeah, of course.
He's learned that over time.
Yeah, of course. Yes. I've learned this over time.
I told him I was always right, but he wasn't having it.
One might say that I made a few mistakes, here and there, but this is part of evolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But then I've learned that she's right. Her instinct is very sharp, and so I tend to go with her instinct more often than not.
Right.
Though there are sometimes that I'll go straight off another tangent, and hope for the best. But but generally, there isn't much. I don't think there's much conflict in our decision making.
There's a question for you that just came in. It said that why can't the husband help to train the children to pick up the socks? Why is it always left to the mothers to train?
So actually,
no, they do now. They do. Well, that's an assumption.
That's an assumption.
Because certainly, let me speak for Wale.
Yeah.
Because I think, to answer that question based on the way it has been delivered.
Well, actually, no. It actually said, is there a place for the husband to help educate the children to tidy up and not just leave it to the wife?
Yes, absolutely. I think the challenge is that a lot of the time the wife is the main carer. Okay. It's the person who spends most time with the child, and that's why they tend to be the one that is responsible for things like that. But absolutely, there's a place for the husband.
It left to me that sometimes that they will sleep outside. But I know she carried them for 9 months, and she can't see it happen. So yeah. So no, there is, and we both do. Like I said, I'm perhaps a bit more extreme because I'll be happy to say go into a tent in the back of the house and pull up there until you learn how to do this. But
Okay. So, Ruth and Ayo, how do you guys reach a final decision when you're, with regards to a major issue?
I'll let Ayo answer in a second, but there's just something that I was reminded of that our counsellor said, is that sometimes both of you can think that your way is right, and often it's about finding a third way. And although it sounded like a very simple thing, I think that knowing that has helped me to firstly be a bit more humble when you're discussing things that you might disagree on, but also be a bit more hopeful that the solution might not be in exactly the way that either of you are saying it needs to be, but there might be a third way where both parties can still be satisfied and not feel like they've had to compromise on their values, but something that is going to be a lot more helpful in the marriage.
Yeah. And I think, me and Ruth are both quite strong-willed people. But I think one thing that I'm quite grateful to Ruth for is that if I'm saying that, look, this is what we have to do, and there hasn't been a third way. A great example is actually where we settled down to live, first house, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where there was a lot of back and forth over where she would have preferred for us to live and where I thought we should live. And in the end, she reluctantly was like, okay, you know what? This is fine. Let's go with what you're saying. I've been grateful for the fact that even though she's quite strong-willed and has a very kind of fixed picture in her mind of how she wants things to be. If I'm saying, look, this is what we need to do, I really think we should do this. And after she's gone away and prayed about it, because she'll always say, fine, I'll go pray about it. She actually does go and pray about it. It's not just
a threat.
It's not a threat or a kind of score. She actually does. She does actually go away and pray about it. And usually, I think, because she knows that, you know, in those situations, I also submit to God as well. That she submits to, you know, again, my spiritual headship, and she'll say, fine, you know what, let's do this. Let's do it your way. And I think the other thing I'm grateful for is that, you know, it's often the case, and I think that's Tinuke, you spoke about this, where you're praying about, you know, how if it's the wrong decision, you know, you're praying that, you know, Jesus is going to let this guy make the wrong decision. If I make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way both of us would like, Ruth is really good at not kind of saying, I told you that we should have done it this way, I told you it shouldn't have done that. And oftentimes it works out well in the end. But she's really good in that moment at not kind of saying, oh, this is your fault it happened this way, or this is your fault it happened that way.
I just say it in my mind.
She hasn't said it to me, which is a good thing.
Great. Okay. The final question, and if you can try and keep it as short as possible, please, so that we can finish at 2. How do you fireproof your marriages? Because now we hear a lot about adultery, affairs, couples having affairs in marriages. How do you fireproof your marriages? I know everything by the grace of God, but what are the practical things that you guys do?
So yeah, obviously prayer that we've all spoken about, but also practically, even from when we were dating, we've always had a very honest relationship where even in marriage, I'll ask Kyle, and he'll ask me the same. What are your triggers or things that you feel could ever make you vulnerable to stepping out? So for me, I need a lot of emotional attention. And yeah, I'll be honest with Kyle that, yeah, babe, if I need you sometimes to step up in that area, not because I will cheat or I'm planning to, but I think, yeah, one of the key ways is having very open communication rather than talking about your triggers. That's not cheating. That's actually helpful to you and your marriage. So yeah, I think for us, that's been a huge thing.
Yeah, I think for me as a guy, I mean, it's definitely just openness and just being kind of very transparent. And with things like social media, which is the entry point in this day and age, Ruth has access to all my accounts. She has my accounts on her phone, so there's no sliding into my DM. In fact,
a lot of them are blocked before you.
It's funny, a lot of times when people do actually slide into my DMs. When people slide into my DMs, it's funny. Ruth has actually already seen it and deleted it before I can even see it. So yeah, that for me is just that level of transparency, which means that I don't have to worry about drama.
No, that's good, very good. Wale and Tinuke?
Yeah, but for us, I think, the openness, like Ayo said, Tinuke has full access to everything. And apart from that, I think we're constantly in touch. It's the communication. I think always being there, and always being available, I think is very important. I remember even in Lagos, being in Lagos, and I'd be speaking to Tinuke on the phone, and members of staff will then ask me after the call, "Sir, is that your wife you're talking to?" And I'm like, yeah, because of course I've started the conversation with hot babe or babe. And they're like, is that your wife you're talking to? I'm like, yeah, that is my wife. She's a babe. You know what I mean? And it's about things like that. Constantly keeping it as if perhaps we're still dating even. And that's it for me, I think. Just being constant. Being there and being available all the time.
I think for me, I agree, transparency, openness, communication, but I think the extra thing that I probably do is I am so aware of the fact that men are physical, visual beings, or what is it I say? So it's very important to me to make sure that the woman that he fell in love with, I don't go around being a frog. You know that some people get married and suddenly they're boo-boos in their house and they, like they kind of lose. You know what I mean? And it's not because you can't be comfortable or you can't be, but it's also bearing in mind the fact that men are visual and there are many chicks to view. You know what I mean? So I need to be of a standard that these chicks are not actually pulling him because what he has at home is good enough. Do you understand what I mean? And I think so for me, I think that's the additional thing that I put in on top of all of that. I'm so aware of the fact that this is how God created men. And so I need to be a hot babe.
So hot babe, do you wear hot pants around the house?
Well,
I can't tell you what I wear around that.
but look, it is important because, I mean, till now, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I still look at that bum and tap it from time to time as I'm walking by.
Please, their children
And my daughter will be like, Dad, that's disgusting. I'm like, when you marry, leave me. This one is my own wife. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh wow! Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Ayo, will you say something?
No, I was just saying thank you so much for having us.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Honestly, you guys have been amazing. Thank you for giving us so much insight into your lives. We could go on, and there's still questions coming, but it's 2. I think we need to go. And today's Ayo's birthday. I'm sure you guys have things planned, so we need to go. I think again, excuse me. I think we're going to have to bring you guys back again. And with Larry and Bisola, if Bisola will like, Bisola, we want you. Bisola will agree. But this has been amazing. I will try and screenshot. Sorry, I was just, oh gosh, so many questions. Anyway, I'll keep the questions and maybe we'll get to, maybe you guys get to answer them next time. But guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. You guys have been amazing. Can we please show them some love, please? Can we show them some love? It's been a lovely, lovely session. Great session. Yeah. We just love you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, it was fun and was lovely. Yeah. And you guys were so authentic and real and just yourselves. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay. Yes. Keep the comments coming because I want them to know that you guys